Hello, Tracy.
Hello.
Sorry, I don't have any volume. Now I have volume. Hi, Tracy.
Can you hear me?
Hey, I hear you.
Good. Okay.
Nice to see you. Long time.
Thank you. Yeah, it has been a while since I've joined these meetings.
Hmm.
Been a bit distracted, to be honest.
Okay. I heard you had a good CDCon.
I think it went really well. I think that I think we do a really good job of it, to be honest.
Yeah.
There were some really interesting presentations around, fixing this problem of standardizing workflows. Almost everybody talked about it in some way.
Workflows themselves or the information around them or the notifications or
Pretty
interoperability.
much being able to start adding additional data to it, additional activities like, of course, security tooling,
Right. Yeah.
just being able to expand them in a more standardized way.
Mm. So Andrea is supposed to come, so that's why I'm not really starting the meeting. So I invite your friend.
So I asked Steve Taylor to join too. That we talked a lot about message brokers and listeners at CDCon. There's some work that the Ortelius team would really like to do to be able to kick off based on a publish event, start executing SBOMs automatically and bringing in the information so we can manage and share SBOMs.
Cool.
So
Great
yeah,
ones, yeah.
yeah. So I think that I had asked Steve to. I think he'll join it. He'll be here shortly.
Hi, Steve.
Oh, hi, Steve. Yeah, I think it was a good. I think we did. I think it was good. There was a lot of good sharing there. We didn't have a big group, but it wasn't that much, to be honest, it wasn't that much smaller than what they had the day before at the SOS event, the Secure Open Source Software Conference.
Cool. Good. Andrea.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi. Sorry I'm late.
No
A
worries.
bit of traffic on the way.
Oh.
Let me bring up the notes today. All right. So April 29th. Okay, I put the link to the notes in the chat. All right, let's get started. So for the recording, my name is Andrea Frittoli. I work for IBM. And so welcome. This is the CDEvents working group. And feel free to sign yourself in if you would like to. Okay, I put a couple of things on the agenda as usual, but feel free to add more. It's relevant. So for from the governing board meeting, I just wanted to relay the news that Roxanne will be staying with the CD Foundation throughout 2024 at least, which is great. So we will be able to rely on her services. And also I put a link to the ambassador cohort. So we have the new cohort for 2024 with 50 ambassadors, I think. And yeah, so we're discussing how to better align with the cohort across CDF and the messaging that we give. So I'll keep you posted. Hopefully there is an opportunities to have some of these ambassadors help us spread the word about CDEvents. Right, and I put a link here for the hotel CDEvents conversation. So there is an issue where there is some discussion happening, and thanks Emil for bringing that up to my attention as well. Yeah, I would recommend following that conversation there. If you're interested. So basically, as we discussed before, the OpenTelemetry community is looking at pipeline observability, and the discussion is about what role CDEvents can play there, to avoid, having conflicting standards. Okay. Right. On the Open Source Summit EU, so the upcoming summit in Europe, in Vienna, CD Mini Summit, I saw there were some questions in the last meeting. So I just wanted to confirm that the CFP for the Open Source Summit closes tomorrow, and there will be a CD Mini Summit, which is a co-located event. Olivier Vernon will be the chair for the program committee. He's the person who usually runs the CI/CD room at FOSDEM. So he's in Europe time zone. Yeah, so the CD Summit will not be an open source summit track like it was in Seattle. It will be a co-located event. Half a day event, there will be a dedicated CFP. It's not open yet, so it will open soon, but we don't know yet when. I also asked whether getting a submission approved or accepted for the CD Mini Summit would grant an open source summit ticket. But yeah, I don't have an answer for that yet. So I'll let you know if I get an answer. I'll just keep going and stop questions. So for the CDCon, I think you were discussing about this. I kind of wrote here some of my things that I thought were interesting out of the talks and some discussions we had as well. I don't need to go through all of them now, but maybe just the top ones. So we had a dedicated room with a swag station, which was nice with old t-shirts and stickers. And we had many submissions spread across the 2 days. So we had a full schedule for the 2 days. And unfortunately, we couldn't get more talks because these are kind of Linux Foundation free package, and you get the 2 days. You cannot get more than 2 days, so you cannot fit as many talks as you want. But we had maybe about 40, 50 people in the room, I think, most times. And yeah, so we had several talks about mentioning or related to CDEvents in some format. So for my talk, I put a link to the slides there, but I put links to the various presentations. One that I mentioned is about MLOps, and maybe this is worth mentioning. We had some discussion with the DC as well about the scope of CDEvents and whether it would make sense to apply the same CDEvents framework about the various areas. So GitOps, DevOps, MLOps, FinOps, I think are the fourth one that he mentioned. So maybe that's something that we can discuss at some point in one of the meetings, whether we want to consider CDEvents for MLOps. And of course, there was very interesting presentation from Tracy and Steve. I don't know if you had a chance to talk about them, but I think I I mentioned Steve's presentation here about Guardian of Codes and the idea of to collect CDEvents from tools into Ortelius to improve security posture and have the ability to kind of automate security features out of band. So it was really nice to see. So thanks for that. Yeah, there was some presentation from OpsMX, which I wanted to call out about. They basically took CDEvents and tried to collect events from various tools and to see how it goes, and they kind of reported issues they found, successes and failures, and where they had CDEvents, where they had to use cloud events. So I think it will be good to follow up with them, with Ashmita and Gopinath, to see if they have more feedback and if we can use their inputs to improve on CDEvents. Oh, recordings are available. Cool.
Oh, they are good.
Yeah, just someone added the link there.
Right there, also in the chat here, but yeah, I just found them now. I looked for them before, but yeah, because I was actually trying to be part of it remotely. It was said on the front page of the OSS schema or somewhere that it should be possible to attend remotely through live YouTube broadcasts, but there were no links shared, so I couldn't join it, unfortunately. So I guess that information was wrong. But now they're there, so we who were not there could take part of it afterwards now.
Yeah, that's great. So I asked when I was there, and they told me they were recording the talks. So that's I'm glad to see that they finished the post-processing. Yeah, so in terms of hallway track, I met with Nima on the Canoe.io project. That's for an internal developer platform that they built within the Canoe initiative. It's called IDP Builder, and it basically sets you
Sorry
up.
about that,
Sets up.
guys.
No worries. What the Canoe IDP Builder does is sets up internal developer platform in a box with a specific set of tools, and they would be interested into having CDEvents as a interoperability layer. And the idea was to set up a POC using Argo CD and Flux. So they embed Argo CD by default, but setting up, switching to Flux through CDEvents. And so, but we need to kind of align on the events that are consumed and produced by Flux and Argo CD. So for Flux, there is an implementation done for consuming events. I think producing events is in progress as far as I remember. And for Argo CD, there is a POC kind of configuration in the notification engine for producing events. So it would be good to get some alignment on those so we could build this POC. So I started a document with some of the events, and hopefully we can get the right people in the same room to move this forward.
I think it's nice to hear about Canoe again. I haven't seen much buzz around it lately. I saw when it was published, was it a year ago or something? But since then I haven't seen much action in it really. But apparently it's ongoing and it's live and people are working on it still.
Yeah, it's definitely alive, and at least I know a few folks are definitely working on that, and they yeah, and they created this kind of IDP builder tool that lets you set up kind of a developer platform in a box with an opinionated selection of tools. And yeah, so it's definitely still active. Personally, I think it would be a nice way to showcase CDEvents, and also to hopefully get more adoption. If they're can you get adopters, then they have CDEvents in there. It's kind of a fast track to starting to use those events. And also Funny Jap from the Screwdriver project was at the event. So it was good to connect with her. So we had a discussion about CDEvents. So she learned what CDEvents are, and we discussed the possibility of adoption at Screwdriver. And so that would be good. I think it would be great if we were able to get CDEvents into most of the project at CDF. Would be a good success.
I agree. Just how do we do that? And I would like to get on the agenda for a future conversation about adoption and really what we need to do for adoption.
I think we had some issue, right, around compliance with CDEvents, or how can we state that a tool is compliant with CDEvents? Was there a separate issue under, remember, or was it part of a pull request discussion or somewhere? Or
Yeah, I created an issue about that. That's something that we need to discuss, what it means to be compliant with CDEvents. But yeah, so we can discuss. We can discuss further today if you want. So we only had one item left from my side, at least on the agenda after the CDCon. Any more comments or things about questions or comments about CDCon? No? Okay. So one thing that I wanted to bring up briefly as part of the conversation with the OpenTel community, there was some pushback, so to say, about the fact that we have events with run inside, so like task run, pipeline run, or tests run or tested run. Basically, those are the events. And yeah, so I put a link to the conversation on that site. The concern was that adding the run part does not add much information, that it uses more space. Yeah, so I just wanted to raise a question whether we should remove it or we should keep it as it is, because again, it would be a breaking change. So if we want to do this change, we should do it maybe in the next release, so sooner rather than later. Yeah, I'm not sure whether we should do it. I think there is some value in having the run part, which is why we added it to distinguish it from the non-run side. It is true, I would say, that the run use case is much more predominant. So having events for definitions of tests or pipelines is probably, or having automation about that is less common. But yeah, at the end of the day, I don't know how to reach a decision. I mean, from CDEvents point of view, I would say let's keep things as they are and let's avoid additional churn unless there is a strong pushback from the auto community. But maybe there is some way to have some kind of adapter where we don't really need to take things as they are defined on CDEvent side. And
Yeah.
Ole, Yeah.
No, I guess we will anyway end up in some kind of conversion between OTel and the semantic conventions for CI/CD and OTel with CDEvents, so we might not have a one-to-one mapping anyway. And I fully understand that for the OTel use cases, it's only the runs, so to say, that are interesting, I guess, to define a convention for. I'm not sure they are at all interested in when things are defined or when like pipelines are deleted or such. It's mostly, I guess, when they are running. So I see from their end that they see it as superfluous. But from our perspective, I think it clarifies things. But well, I could live with either or myself as well.
I think having the run on there it just makes it easier to understand. You know, it just, when you're looking at it from outside of the, you know, new to CDEvents, you kind of, it's implied what is happening when you say like pipeline run versus just pipeline. So I would vote to keep it.
I would too. In fact, as we're having this discussion, I'm confused by why. I mean, maybe it's implied. I don't know. Maybe it is implied. I haven't thought about it. I think it makes it clear. That's all. Simplifying things sometimes is best.
Yeah,
Making no assumptions.
Yeah, I guess some people could see the run term as a predicate itself, that the pipeline is running or is in a run or something. But
Yeah.
But that's not how we want to see it. We see the run as the subject.
Right.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And sometimes, you know, when we're close to this stuff, and that's been something that's from the very beginning, we've been using that term. Maybe we don't, because when you get close to something, you don't see where it may be confusing.
Yeah.
And like you said, I don't think there's going to be an exact mapping. I think we're always going to have something that's not going to map exactly, that we're going to have to handle as an edge case. This won't be the only one that we run across.
Okay. No, thanks for that. Yeah, I'll report back then on the hotel discussion. I think that on CDEvent side, we would prefer to keep the naming as it is, and that most likely there is not going to be a one-to-one mapping in any case. So maybe this is something that we could handle in the SDKs to do the translation. Yeah. So Tracy, did you want to discuss about adoption of CDEvents?
Yes, yeah, and unfortunately, we have a Ortelius call on the back of this, so let me just bring it up so the folks who were not at CDCon. So, how do I start? We have really been trying to think of adoption for Ortelius and for CDEvents. One of the things that I have perceived, maybe an incorrect perception, but users, like if we just think about Jenkins, let's just take Jenkins because there's such a giant population. They generally don't want to change their workflows unless they absolutely have to. So there is now, though, a discussion about having to do so. And like I said, there were a couple of I unfortunately didn't get to see everybody's presentations, but the ones I did, there was discussion about trying to standardize workflows, trying to make them easier to add and subtract steps in the workflow. And here we've been talking about this for how long now? Quite some time. So I feel like there's an opportunity. There's an opportunity right now to really bring CDEvents to life. If we can run it alongside of adding just SBOM generation. If we just say, use CDEvents to start generating SBOMs. And we're going to automatically do that, in the simplest way through an event. I spoke to several people about this, and most of them were pretty open to it. The ones that didn't get it were, ironically, on the OpenSSF side. I had one person who I won't mention their name say, well, the only thing you really need to do for security is run static code analysis and you're done. Because there's oftentimes a disconnect between DevOps and security professionals. But I do believe that the DevOps engineers are being asked to add more security tooling to the workflow, or they're being asked to generate a second workflow that gets called by one workflow. Regardless, it's being disrupted. And I feel like this is a really good time for us to start thinking about getting a project going that I'm assuming there's going to be work to be done on on the tooling side to create some kind of a messenger or a broker of some sort, to build a standard listener. Now, I know that I think Fidelity may have built one, and it would be interesting to find out if they'd be, what they did and what that looks like, and if it's something that they could contribute back to the CDF. And do we need to create a separate project for it? So these are the things I think that we are at a point now that we should be talking about. I think we've done a really great job in building all the standards and the vocabulary, and I really believe it's time to create something that we can that can be consumed, and we can turn pipelines into something that, at this point in time, it just may be one step in the pipeline that gets executed from an event, and it may be the publish step. But if we start building that infrastructure, I believe that people will come and they'll start using it. So those are my thoughts.
And Andrea, did you ever get any word from the Ericsson folks about getting what they did for their POC added to the repo?
Yeah, actually, I think the first PR is merged now, and
Okay.
the second PR is up, and there's just a couple of CI things to be solved, and hopefully it will merge soon.
All right, cool. That's good to know. I'll go out and take a look at what's going on.
Yeah, so I feel like we just have an opening here, and I think we should take advantage of it. People have to have a reason to do things, and I think adding security to the pipeline is the reason people are doing things now. And I'd hate for CDEvents to not be seen as a path to getting this done. I don't know if anybody has any thoughts. Maybe I'm crazy. Love to hear those thoughts.
No, I think it makes total sense. You mentioned Fidelity there. What was it? The Jenkins plugin work you talk about then, or is it Fidelity doing some integration with CDEvents?
I don't know how.
They did. I mean, they did publish the Jenkins plugin.
Okay, so they're doing it through a Jenkins plugin then. Okay, I wasn't sure if they were made changes to the core Jenkins server or not.
No, as I understand it, I haven't actually looked at it in detail myself, but as I understand it, there is a plugin that you need to apply then to your Jenkins.
And I think that's the problem. It's the plug. It's having to have a plugin. Yeah, right. We got to figure out how to get away from the plugins, but they did do that. They have something.
That's how it's done in Jenkins, right? You do plugin. But yeah, sure. And also, I guess you need to instrument all event sending and maybe receiving as well in the jobs themselves, so the pipeline code, right? So it's not implicitly sending events, I assume. I don't know, so maybe I should
I
not say.
don't think it is.
No. It would be easier, of course, if the users don't need to change their workflow or their pipeline code for this.
Exactly. And that, we did, as just respecting the Jenkins community, the first person we even talked to about this was Mark. He was a little confused by it. He was like, I don't really hear anybody asking me to make those updates. It's not something we're being asked to do, which is fair. But that was not reflected in the presentations that we saw.
Yeah. So obviously, I don't think that Jenkins should always send events without you asking for it at all, but maybe you shouldn't need to configure it per job or per pipeline. Maybe
Yeah,
you
we
should
talked
configure
about
it-
that too, but there was a way if there's something we could turn on or off for them.
Yeah, I mean, centrally in the instance, or maybe semi-centrally. I don't really know where to do it, but I guess there should be places to say that now I want my jobs or my pipelines to send events as well. That should work. I'm a bit concerned. I'm not sure. I mean, Jenkins itself is not really aware of when you build artifacts or when you publish artifacts, right? Not the
No,
core.
and that's the tricky part. If you have a free-form Jenkins file and you're calling like a Docker push in there just through a shell command, or if you're pushing something, a Java artifact over to Sonatype, there's some plugins that allow you to do that, but that means we have to go visit every single plugin that does a publish and convince them to update something. So it's going to be a challenge, but there may be something we can do on the back end with scraping the logs or something like that to look for certain keywords to say that this workflow did a push to Docker Hub, for example, and do it kind of in the background.
So I can just say how we do it in Ericsson. We have this Eiffel protocol that we used for many years in Ericsson, and we've actually had a Jenkins plugin for Eiffel internally. Then it's not open source, that one. So there we have implicit event sending, Eiffel event sending when a job starts and finishes. So of course that's something that Jenkins can be aware of. Jenkins core knows about that. So then you would send these start and finish events for each job or the pipeline. But obviously when an artifact is created and pushed or published, then Jenkins doesn't know about it and this plugin doesn't either. But then there is an opportunity to at least connect for the user then to explicitly send this artifact event, published event, and then also Jenkins, the plugin that we have in Jenkins then could help you. I believe it could help you connecting it to the pipeline events, to the pipeline and task events, let's say.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so that we have to do some more digging on it, but exactly what you're talking about, Mel, is something along those lines to even if we just have the start and finish of a Jenkins pipeline, that will give us our starting point that we can then look to see if we can figure out what the artifact is, and if we have the artifact, then we can do the SBOM thing after that. So it's a roundabout way to get there, but I think we can get there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we do have it for Jenkins now. So in my understanding, that's how the Fidelity implemented the plugin is basically it's everything in Jenkins works with plugins. So I don't think it requires extra work in the workflow to send events. But
that's the tricky part with Jenkins. They have their freeform pipeline run where you get to do any shell command that you want. So you can skip plugins altogether. That's the hard part.
So I added the link to the Jenkins pipeline plugin.
Oh, perfect.
I should have written Jenkins plugin instead of pipeline. I can add it to notes as well here.
Yeah,
So
it's
more about
also here.
All right, I will check that out.
that's the binary.
Yeah, on the plugins page and plugins Jenkins.io, there is the documentation how to use it. And
Does it say what kind of events it sends? It doesn't, does it?
no.
Jobs, projects, queues, and stage. I think it mostly looks like it's these, like what you say, life cycle events or these pipeline and task events, right?
Yeah, I would imagine so. Yeah.
So no artifact events, I assume, then, at this moment.
There is a build.
Oh, okay.
No,
Yeah.
pipeline run started. Yeah, pipeline run started. Just yeah, so it's pipeline events. Right. So for Tecton, what we are doing is we are introducing the ability for users to define basically define through some JSON file for now that they are producing artifacts. So like when you create a workflow, you can at the end of your workflow produce a small JSON file with a list of artifacts that you produced in that. And if that JSON file is there, then we kind of consume it and put it in the status of the resources so that then external users, controllers can use it, which means that our Tecton change component that is doing the signing and so forth can use that to see certain artifacts have been produced that needs to be signed, and the events controller can send events for those. So once that's in place, we could start sending artifact events directly from Tecton because we introduced that concept of artifact. So I guess that depends tool by tool. If you are aware of what the build is doing or not, you can send more events or less events, fewer events. But then you could have the tool that is doing the generating the event itself, sending the events, or you could produce the event manually, as you said, Emil, what you're doing with the iFill ones.
So how do you do in Tecton? And is it that the user of Tecton needs to instrument it themselves in the pipeline explicitly for each event, or is it so that the Tecton core somehow could send the events by some global configuration, or?
Yeah, so in Tecton today for events, it's done by core, or there is a controller that watches for the resources, and when things start and stop, it sends the events, so that users don't have to do anything other than setting endpoint to enable sending of events.
Oh, okay, so it's one configuration centrally. That's good.
Yeah. I mean, there have been several requests over time to have more flexible configuration, and we might do that eventually, but also we kind of didn't want to go and re-implement something like a event router in Tecton. So if you send your events to a broker, then the broker can manage multiple destinations for subscriptions and those kind of things.
Yeah, I guess what we have had in iFill in Ericsson as well is that we have had the possibility to add, for example, custom data to these implicit events that are implicitly sent by the plugin Jenkins. So then if you want any additional or optional or custom data sent along with these pipeline or task events, you could then instrument that in your own code, and it will then automatically add that to the already implicitly sent events. And in Jenkins, I think that works well for pipeline start and pipeline finished events, but it doesn't work for pipeline queued event because there the context is not yet created in Jenkins in the environment. So you couldn't at that time already read the information from the job definition, so to say.
Yeah, so just to give you just a kind of the base use case that we're looking for that we found on the Ortelius side is Ortelius can consume SBOMs and it knows about the artifacts and what artifacts have been deployed where. But the problem is when you look at a SBOM, let's say you have a package dependency that's coming from it's a Maven jar file that's your dependency. So you know in the SBOM that you're consuming, let's say log4j.jar, and you know what version that you're consuming. But the problem is there's no way to get back to the git commit or even find the repo of where the source code is that created that version of log4j jar file. Because you can go and try to infer it through the plural and stuff, but the SCM repository is optional in the Jenkins in the POM files. So this is the link that we've known about, but I didn't realize how bad it was, that there's no way for probably 90% of the code out there to find out where of your artifacts where the source code is that matches it. So our basic use case is going to be how can we tie a git commit and the repo to an artifact and where that artifact was published. Once we have that information, we could do a bunch of other stuff with that. We can do the SBOM scanning. We can do vulnerability scans. There's a bunch of other benefits once you have that linked created. But right now, like I said, 90% of it doesn't exist. Other languages like Golang kind of have it implicitly built in, but the older languages don't work that way.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that those kinds of use cases are raised now as well in this world as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just referring back again to how we've done it earlier with our Jenkins jobs in Ericsson, then they've always been triggered or often been triggered by commits in the SCM system, and then we send these SCM events first in the Jenkins job, and then we also send all other events after that in the same pipeline, and they can then track back or link back to the original source code event that contains the reference to the actual SCM system.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we need to be able to grab.
Yeah.
And that's similar to the use case that the Guac community had. The guac.sh, the Guac tool is hosted by the OpenSSF, I think. And they do similar in a way to, well, they don't have, I think, deployment information like Ortelius, but they allow, basically Guac allows you to store like security related data for a software, so like SBOM and so forth, but they were also missing a link between the SBOM and what kind of workflow or code change that specific SBOM was associated with. And that was the use case for Guac to adopt CDEvents, so that you basically can inject a CDEvents with the SBOM link into it and extract it, and then inject so create this connection between the SBOM and the place where the SBOM was generated, basically. It's not exactly the same, but it's a similar.
It's very similar. It just, yeah, we're both looking for the missing link, the missing data there. Well, I got to jump off for another meeting. Thank you, everybody, and we'll keep showing up here. We definitely have stuff that we want to follow and implement with CDEvents. So,
Thanks for being here.
all right, thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Steve.
Bye.
Right. Anything else? Anything from you, Jolander, or from you, Brett, you wanted to bring up today?
No. There's some correlation between what he was talking about with the SBOM link to the source code and some of the work that I'm doing on my side project, but I'm not ready to like share all that work yet because it's still, you know, early. I talked about it last meeting a little bit, but he's right that even if you could get, like, you could probably do like 85% of an SBOM, but there's going to be, if you use some older, you know, Java or Maven stuff, you might never find the source code. We've run into this a lot at work when I'm doing my third-party notices for, you know, our software, when we start listing out our open source dependencies, and you run across a 10-year-old jar and you're like, oh God. So yeah, but that's all I have to add. Everything else that I talked about last meeting is still ongoing. So.
All right. Thanks, Brett. Yeah, let's then see you back in a week. Yeah, good to see everyone. Until next time. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
See you guys. Have fun.